Welcome to a place where stories of love aren't just told, they're felt deep in the soul. Here, silence and emptiness turn into fire, where forgotten hearts remember how to beat again. Every word you'll hear is born from raw truth, the loneliness of cold nights, the unexpected spark of a glance, the trembling ache of rediscovering desire, and the sacred healing that only intimacy can bring. These are not ordinary stories. They are journeys through pain, passion, and rebirth. They are whispers of scars turning into strength, and souls learning to live again through the power of love. If you've ever been broken, if you've ever longed for someone to see you, hold you, and awaken you, this is your sanctuary. Stay, listen, feel, and let these stories breathe life into your own. The silence after everything ended was heavier than any noise. It wasn't just quiet in the house, it was quiet inside, like even the heart had stopped asking for more. There had been years of trying to fix what was already broken, years of waiting for love to return, waiting for warmth that never came. The bed had felt like a battlefield, a place where love had once lived, but had long since died. Nights were long, stretched with cold sheets, and an emptiness that touched deeper than skin. Lying there, staring into the dark, it felt like the body had become invisible, forgotten, unwanted, like a ghost in its own home. Touch had become a stranger. The memory of being kissed, held, or even simply desired felt so far away, almost unreal, like something borrowed from another life. There was a time when passion had been natural, when just the brush of a hand or the look in his eyes was enough to set fire within. But those days were gone, replaced with silence, distance, and the kind of loneliness that can hollow out a person from the inside. It wasn't just about being alone in a room, it was about being unseen in a life. The body ached not just for love, but for acknowledgement, the kind of touch that says, I see you, I want you. That hunger, once alive, had been starved for so long it seemed pointless to remember it at all. Nights blurred into each other, sleep filled with restless turning, days filled with pretending nothing was missing. But deep down, everything was missing. There were moments of reflection, sitting quietly with old photographs or staring at the mirror, searching for the woman who once knew what it felt like to be desired. The reflection showed lines on the face, softness where once there was firmness, but beyond that was something harder to face, the emptiness in the eyes. They no longer shone with the glow of being loved. They only reflected silence. After the divorce, people said time would heal. They said independence would feel freeing, that loneliness was just another chapter, and soon new beginnings would come. But nights told a different truth. Freedom without love was another kind of prison. The body did not care about independence. It remembered warmth, remembered passion, remembered being wanted, and each time it remembered, the emptiness grew heavier. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the way it slowly convinced the mind to believe that passion had no place left, that love had been buried with the years of disappointment. There was a voice inside whispering, that part of life is over, and it was almost easy to believe it. Easy to fold into the routine of work, of solitude, of filling the void with everything except what the heart truly longed for. Easy to pretend desire belonged to another time, another version of life. But pretending didn't silence the ache. It only buried it deeper, making it sharper in the quiet hours. The body, though untouched for so long, still carried memory under the skin. The longing sat there, not loud, but constant. The way the heart sped up at the sight of intimacy in movies, the way the breath caught when watching two lovers on the street, the way the chest tightened when seeing someone else being held close, it all betrayed the truth. Love was not dead, desire was not gone, it was trapped, waiting for someone to reach in and unlock it. Still, the silence felt endless. The house carried it, the air carried it, even the mornings carried it. Waking up alone was the hardest reminder, an empty side of the bed, an untouched pillow, a space that once belonged to warmth now cold and flat. Some mornings the tears came quietly, uninvited, without reason other than the ache of remembering what it felt like to belong to someone. Other mornings, numbness replaced the tears, and numbness was worse. Tears at least meant there was still something alive. Numbness meant surrender. The silence of emptiness was not only about what was missing, it was also about fear. Fear of never being touched again, never being loved again, never being seen as more than just someone who had lived past her time of passion. Fear that the body had closed itself off so deeply that even if someone did reach, it would no longer know how to respond. Yet deep within that silence, a tiny voice refused to die. It whispered that love could not be erased so easily, that the heart, no matter how scarred, still had the capacity to beat harder for someone again. That intimacy, though forgotten for years, could still be reborn. That being wanted was not something that faded forever. It was something that waited, patient, for the right moment. The silence carried weight, yes. But within that silence was the faintest pulse of hope, barely noticeable yet unbroken. It was the pulse that whispered there was still life to be lived, still passion to be discovered, still warmth waiting somewhere in the world. And when the silence finally shattered, it would be unlike anything expected. It happened when least expected, in a moment that seemed ordinary, but carried something extraordinary hidden within it. A glance that should have passed without notice stayed long enough to stir something forgotten. Those eyes did not just look. They reached into places no one had touched in years. There was no judgment in them, no pity, no distance, only warmth, only presence, only a kind of seeing that stripped away the walls built so carefully over time. It began slowly, like the faintest spark. A smile that lingered, a silence shared without discomfort, the kind of stillness that made the air feel alive. At first, it was easy to ignore, to pretend it was nothing, to convince the heart that the pulse racing in the chest was only imagination. But then there was the touch, small, almost accidental, fingers brushing against skin in a way that left a trail of heat long after they pulled away. That touch was not casual. It lingered, deliberate yet unspoken, and with it came the trembling reminder of everything once thought lost. An embrace followed, unexpected, unplanned, and yet it felt as though it had been waiting for years. Arms wrapped around with gentleness, but beneath the gentleness was strength. It was not the kind of embrace offered in politeness or friendship. It was deeper, fuller, an embrace that carried a question and an answer all at once. It unlocked what had been locked away, broke open the chest where longing had been buried, and poured life back into a soul that had been convinced it was too late. The hunger rose quietly at first, like a whisper, then louder, until it was impossible to deny. Not just hunger of the body, though that was undeniable, the ache of being wanted, the fire of being touched where numbness had lived, but hunger of the heart too, the craving to be seen, to be held, to be cherished not as a memory of who once was, but as someone alive now, still capable of love, still capable of passion. Every stolen glance became heavier, every brush of fingers more charged. Each time those eyes found their way back, it was like being pulled into a place of safety and danger all at once. Safety in the comfort of being seen, danger in the intensity of what it awakened. The trembling inside could not be silenced anymore. It was as if the body remembered suddenly the way it had once opened, the way it had once burned, the way it had once surrendered completely. The first kiss was inevitable. It came not in haste but in hesitation, like both were aware of how fragile the moment was. Lips barely touched at first, tentative, trembling, but once they did, something burst open. It was not just a kiss, it was a release, years of silence and emptiness breaking into fire. The taste of it carried the sweetness of longing fulfilled, the depth of desire rediscovered. That kiss did not just awaken the body, it breathed life into the soul. From that moment, everything shifted. The air between them changed. Conversations became confessions. Laughter became intimacy. Silence became desire. Every time the eyes met, every time the touch returned, the hunger deepened. It was not about replacing the past. It was about finally being alive in the present. What had been thought gone forever was not gone. It was waiting for this flame, this fire, this moment. The trembling ache of being wanted again filled every breath. It was not just about passion, though passion burned with every touch, every kiss, every embrace. It was about being chosen, being seen, being desired in a way that erased years of loneliness. The scars of the past did not disappear, but in those moments they softened. They no longer defined everything. What defined everything now was the fire rekindled, the undeniable truth that life was not over, that love was not dead, that desire still lived and breathed in every heartbeat. That unexpected flame did not just light up the night, it lit up everything. It turned the silence into song, the emptiness into fullness, the fear into hope. It reminded the heart that it could still beat faster, reminded the body that it could still tremble, reminded the soul that it could still be set on fire. And in that flame, life began again. His kiss came like a storm that the heart had been waiting for without knowing it. It was not hurried, not reckless, but it carried something raw, something undeniable, as if every silence, every ache, every lonely night had been leading to that single moment. Lips against lips, soft at first, hesitant as though testing the waters of something fragile, but then deeper, fuller, carrying heat that spread like fire through a body that had forgotten how to feel. It was not just a kiss, it was resurrection. Fire against ashes, breath against breath, life against what had long been numb. The touch followed. His hands did not just wander carelessly. They traced lines across places that had been forgotten, parts of the body that had lived untouched for too long. Fingers moved with both certainty and reverence, as though he knew that what he was waking was not just flesh but memory. With every caress, the numbness gave way, layers of emptiness peeled back, and sparks that had been buried deep beneath the surface began to glow again. The body, hesitant at first, remembered. It remembered the warmth of being wanted, the way skin could hum under touch, the way a single kiss could make the heart race as though it had just discovered life for the first time. Yet it was not only the body that stirred. With every kiss, every touch, something deeper began to shift. It was the soul, long asleep, long wrapped in silence, now opening its eyes. The surrender did not come from weakness, but from release, from the recognition that there was no need to hold the walls anymore. The soul, weary from carrying scars and silence, let go and leaned into the heat, into the love woven into each breath. It was not just passion being rediscovered, it was trust being reborn. The first time his hands moved slowly across the skin, the body trembled. Not with fear, but with a kind of anticipation that had been absent for years. It was like being reminded of a language once spoken fluently, but forgotten with time. Each stroke was a word, each kiss a sentence, until the body remembered the entire song of intimacy. And when it remembered, it sang. The sound was not in voice, but in the way the chest rose and fell, in the way the heart pounded, in the way every nerve lit up with life again. What made it different was not only the passion, but the love woven into it. His eyes, even in the fire of closeness, carried gentleness. His touch, even as it grew bolder, never stopped holding reverence. It was not about taking, it was about giving, about reminding a soul and body both that they were not forgotten, not broken, not past their time. Every kiss seemed to say, "You are still here, you are still alive, you are still wanted." And in that the healing came, not from words, but from the union of heat and tenderness that made each moment sacred. The body, once starved, now opened without resistance. The soul, once guarded, surrendered completely. The two, body and soul, did not just exist side by side. They intertwined, bound together by the fire that grew with each breath. What had once been ashes, a pile of memories and loss, now burned brightly, fiercely, alive with a flame that refused to fade. It was in the way his lips trailed slowly along the neck, in the way his breath warmed the skin, in the way his hands held tightly yet tenderly, as if promising never to let go. It was in the way passion built, not rushed, but steady, as though time itself was expanding to hold this moment longer. And in that slowness, in that depth, came the awakening, the realization that passion was not gone, that love was not gone, that both had only been waiting for the right touch, the right kiss, the right soul to unlock them. Each moment carried weight, not just of desire but of meaning. Every kiss said more than words could. Every touch carried more than heat. It carried belonging. In his arms, the body was not just alive, it was cherished. The soul was not just awake, it was free. For the first time in years, there was no emptiness, no silence, no ache of being unseen. There was only fire, only love, only the undeniable truth that both body and soul were made to feel this deeply. And in that surrender, in that union of passion and love, life began to bloom again, fierce and unstoppable. What had been shattered by betrayal was not only trust, but the very sense of worth. Being left behind, being replaced, being made to feel invisible had left scars so deep they seemed permanent. Nights were not just lonely, they were haunted, filled with echoes of words once spoken in anger, promises broken, and the sharp ache of rejection. The body had carried those wounds silently, as if love itself was no longer safe to believe in. It felt easier to stay closed, easier to protect what was left by never opening again. But then there were his arms. They did not demand, they did not force, they did not remind of the past. They simply held, and in that holding was something that began to mend what had been broken. At first it was fragile, almost frightening, the way he pulled me close as if I belonged there. Yet the warmth of his embrace reached deeper than the skin, into the parts of me that had been aching for years. Slowly, piece by piece, something inside began to stitch back together. The intimacy was not only in passion, though passion burned with a force that made the body tremble with rediscovery. It was in the way he looked into my eyes and saw not the brokenness, but the wholeness waiting to return. It was in the way his hands moved with patience, never rushing, never careless, but as if they knew they were touching someone fragile, someone who had been lost and was only now learning to be found again. Every caress felt like a promise, every kiss felt like a vow that this time was different, this time was real. Each night carried more than fire, it carried tenderness, the kind of tenderness that made tears come silently in the dark, not from sadness but from relief. To be held, to be wanted, to be touched with reverence after so long of being unseen, it was a kind of healing words could never give. In those moments, intimacy was no longer just physical, it was medicine for the soul. His body against mine was warmth, his breath against my skin was life, his whispers in the quiet were a soothing balm against years of loneliness. What had once been scars began to fade, not erased, but softened by the way he loved. The betrayal still lived in memory, but it no longer defined every breath. With every night spent in his arms, the weight of the past grew lighter. Each kiss was like a seal over an old wound, each embrace a reminder that love was not meant to destroy, but to restore. And in the rhythm of passion, there was something sacred. It was not about need or possession. It was about connection, about two souls intertwining in a way that felt holy. The heat of his body was not only desire, it was devotion. The way he held me afterward, refusing to let go, spoke louder than any declaration of love. It was in the way he stayed, in the way he breathed with me, in the way he carried me into a stillness where everything felt safe again. There were moments when I would close my eyes and wonder if this was real, if it was possible to feel whole again after being broken so completely. But then his hand would slip into mine, his lips would brush against my shoulder, and the answer would be undeniable. It was real, it was here, it was happening in every breath we shared. Love and sex, once torn apart by betrayal, now blended into something unshakable. They were no longer separate things, but threads of the same fabric, woven together into intimacy that felt eternal. In his arms, passion was not fleeting, it was grounding. Tenderness was not weakness, it was strength. And each night, as his warmth wrapped around me, I felt myself becoming more than I had been before, whole, alive, reborn. Healing did not come in grand gestures. It came in the quiet moments, in the slow kisses, in the way his eyes lingered on me as though I was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It came in the way his voice softened when he spoke my name, in the way his body moved with mine in harmony, in the way he never let me forget that I was wanted, not just for a night, but for a lifetime. What had been broken by betrayal and loneliness was pieced back together in his arms, not perfectly, but beautifully, and in that healing, love, deep, raw, undeniable, became my soul's rebirth. Thank you for being here, for opening your heart to these stories of silence, fire, awakening, and healing. If these words touched you, if you felt even a spark of recognition, then don't leave without joining this journey. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story that may touch your soul. Love is not gone, it is waiting, and together we will keep its flame alive.